it's Tessa. This is Strong Female Lead, and we're back with another episode. I'm very excited. I've got a very special co-host for today's episode. It's none other than the Podfather himself, Andrew O'Corner. Can I combine your last name still?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Andrew O'Corner.
Andrew O'Corner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, hi, everybody. I'm excited to be back. So, thank you, Tessa. And, I'm excited to get into it today. But, I heard you saw a movie recently that I have not seen yet. And it kind of, from the last time I was on the podcast here, I'm jealous. So,
I saw Terminator, the new one, the new Sarah Connor Returns Terminator. And it was pretty good. Guys, it was pretty good. I cried a little bit.
Huh?
Just a little. Just like a few tears at the end. And I was like, oh my God, you guys nailed it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I want to tell you guys the ending, but I don't know how many people have seen it. It's been out for weeks now.
I know. I feel bad. We haven't had a chance to see it yet. And it's definitely one I would definitely want to see top of the list. So I'm really glad to hear that you enjoyed it. But you feel it stayed true to the Terminator 2, SFL. Was it also an SFL movie too? Because I know that they brought in, Okay. All right.
Yeah. The twist at the end really nails it home as an SFL movie. We should definitely do that on the podcast at some point. Because it corrects something that I think should have been corrected from Terminator 2, and I was like, yes.
Interesting.
They fucking nailed it, and that's when I was like, oh my God, you guys did it, yay.
Awesome.
Cheers.
I'm really excited about this. So, all right, very cool.
Yeah. And apparently, a friend of mine knows the Terminator, and I was like, why do you not introduce me to, cool people?
You mean Arnold Schwarzenegger?
No, the new Terminator.
Oh, okay.
If I knew Arnold, you guys would know about it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because I was like, do you just refer to him as the Terminator? I was curious.
The Governator, if anything.
Yes, right, that's true. And again, well, it's so sad that, he seems like a reasonable person at this point in time. That's how far we've fallen. So.
Right.
But no, that's awesome. Well, I definitely have to check it out and everything. But I'm excited about today's episode because, full disclosure, this has been something that Tessa and I had talked about for a while because I was shocked to find out here a couple months ago that Tessa has never seen a Star Wars movie.
It's so shameful.
I wouldn't say it's shameful. Honestly, it's remarkable and impressive in 2019 that you've never once come across one Star Wars. You've never had some
they seem long.
Some overbearing boyfriend being like, you haven't seen Star Wars? You need to see it right now. We're gonna watch them all. I made Hillary do all of that. She's seen all of them. I'm just shocked that that never happened.
I've got a 90, a hard 90, and when I'm like, oh, your runtime is 3 hours. That's Titanic length.
Well, yeah, I guess some of the prequels are a little bit longer, but they're not that the
first ones are
the first ones
reasonable.
are about 2. They're about 2. They're actually the first ones, especially the first one is you're I think gonna love it as a just student of writing because it's just such a perfect beat by beat hero's journey. And so there's a reason why a lot of film writing kind of uses Star Wars as kind of a rubric to this is where when you're talking about the turn or whatever it is this is the moment in Star Wars that refers to that exactly because it's just perfect kind of set up that way. This movie is not like that, but so there were some ideas. The idea here is I actually legitimately spent way too much time thinking about okay, if I was, never seeing a Star Wars movie, where do you kind of introduce, and particularly not just a random person, but Tessa particularly. And there's a couple of things that I knew, which is that sometimes, older movies can be challenging, especially with stuff like special effects and just boring. And I'm the same way too. So starting with the original ones, there's some challenges there just about, are you going to really be hooked on it? The prequels, they're problematic for a number of reasons.
I think the prequels sound fun.
They are, and I'm excited for you to see them, and it's going to be worth it. And but there's kind of it is weird in terms of the order and what makes sense about this. And then the new ones, the Abrams one, there's a whole different kind of thing with them. But this movie is a self-contained movie that came out 2 or 3 years ago. And it takes place right up until it ends with the start of episode 4, which was the very first Star Wars from the 70s, the very first of the original Star Wars.
So they just started it. It's called episode 4.
Episode 4. So legitimately,
the first movie they just started with 4.
So start this is the crazy thing about Star Wars is Lucas comes out with this thing and already from the get-go in the very first movie it starts out in the crawl episode 4. So you know it's like, okay, this is taking place like in the middle of this whole kind of journey, and it is. And so the Star Wars movies are all about kind of the Skywalker family and the kind of long, Godfather-ish kind of Skywalker saga. But the fourth one is kind of where it kicks off, and it's the hero's journey and all that kind of stuff right there. Rogue One answered a question that nobody really asked except for huge nerds, but I love it because there's a couple of things about it. Number one, it's a beautiful, I think, there's some amazing set pieces in this movie. It's self-contained, like, we'll get into that in a second, but there's not going to be a sequel with these characters, at least maybe a prequel, but like... it
was a tragedy, so...
Yeah, it was definitely a tragedy. And I think it also it's modern, so you're actually getting kind of a modern movie, and so you don't have kind of like the issues of kind of the older ones, or like the issues with the prequels and everything like that, and starting to get introduced to the universe. The challenge with it and the downside to doing this is that there are obviously some points of nostalgia that are like in this movie as beats, and if you don't have a reference point, I can imagine that be frustrating. But because it was SFL, and because I think that this is for you, I think a really good introduction that hopefully makes you want to see more Star Wars movies and see this universe a little bit more and kind of understand where these kind of things come from. Hopefully it served as a good kind of introduction to the universe, right there.
I don't know, Andrew. I feel like we talked about how much I like those little bears, and I was really disappointed that was not one bear in this film.
You're talking about Ewoks, the little ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are
do they speak?
They do. It's a kind of
like live in trees or something?
Yeah, they do. It's like an up-jump. They go ahead. There's lots of ups and jumps in their language. Like it's this like kind of weird little like there's this little kind of kind of skitter critter language.
Sounds like a VHS fast forwarding.
It is. There's like kind of and then they that's gonna be the Ewoks aren't really in it until the third of the old ones and everything.
That is disappointing.
Well, but you'll see Chewie, who's kind of like a bear, who's Chewbacca's a Wookiee. No, you'll love
he's
Chewie.
Huge.
He's adorable though.
He's huge and he's not tiny and like live in a tree.
He's Chewie's. You'll like Chewie.
Yeah.
He's
just like I think Yoda's kind of scary also, so I'm not looking forward to him either.
Yoda is wonderful, and there's a bunch of things going on now with Yoda.
I want to give a big shout out to Baby Yoda from the
Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian.
Yeah. So
what is that word?
There's a TV show now that's in there. Can I get one of those? Okay. Hillary's pouring some wine, which I appreciate.
Yay.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean the big thing is that. It's important to me personally that, I feel validated that you also like Star Wars because
I feel really...
as a white cisgendered male, I'm pretty insecure about my position in society, and it's just really important that, the things that I value that other people value in the same, both, level, and I would imagine level of passion, I think, that's very... otherwise, I just get insecure. So that's we're talking about Rogue One, obviously. So Rogue One is a Star Wars story.
A Star Wars story. So I don't want the internet to hate me for any of my takes, which is my number one reservation for having never watched Star Wars, because people feel very passionately about it, and I don't want the attack. I was like, let's do it. This seems like, at least it's one of the modern ones. I was like, this is a good place to start. There were no bears. But...
well, I mean, there was a bear in the sense that there was a gay couple, if you didn't catch that, and the guy was kind of big.
Where?
The blind Jedi and
they were together.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's Disney, so like they have to go ahead and sell us in China, so it's like it's all subtext. But yeah, they're all the people involved with it, like they played it as like them being a couple.
I thought that was like a surrogate father something, but I like that angle more.
Well, especially with the ending of them and everything like that, how sweet that is in terms of kind of like and they also like bicker like a married couple the entire movie and everything. So like
what?
Yeah, so
that guy was one of my favorite characters.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, well, you wanted to maybe go ahead and just do a synopsis of the movie and everything first, or we're gonna start?
We're just gonna jump into it. You guys should have watched this movie. I'm gonna go ahead and say that you also now have Disney Plus because it's been out for over a week.
Yeah, and like you haven't watched Brink and Smart House yet. Like, get out of here. Like
Smart House. Oh, so good.
Johnny Tsunami, Halloween Town 1, 2, and 3.
I was like, this is the millennial dream. I'm like, this is everything I could have wanted in one one service. Thanks.
It was smart. And Alley Cat Strike and so many.
Do they have live sports on Prime?
No, they have
Or
on
Disney?
Disney Plus. No, they have ESPN. You can get in the package, and then also Hulu has live sports with it. But like, because Disney owns all that shit, so
That's what I was thinking.
yeah,
I was
they
like,
have. It's like I think an extra like couple bucks to add in ESPN Live to have all the ESPN stuff. But
that's smart.
yeah. So
So in SFL, we talk about movies with women as strong female leads, women in TV and movies, and we like to think of them in regards to 3 categories. Those categories are: do the women in the film have agency? Are they top billed? And do they move the plot along? And in Rogue One, I think we've got a very good contender. So let me give you like a little brief synopsis, and then we can get this discussion going because I have a lot of opinions that I need to talk about. So the movie starts out with former scientist Galen Erso, who lives on a farm with his wife and young daughter Jen. His peaceful existence comes crashing down when the evil Orson Krennic takes him away from his beloved family. Many years later, Galen becomes the Empire's lead engineer. Science is evil. For the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, the Death Star. I had an inclination of like, that sounds important. When I was watching this, I feel like I've heard those words before. Knowing that her father holds the key to its destruction, Jen joins forces with a spy and other resistance fighters to steal the space station's plans for the Rebel Alliance.
and that's perfect synopsis. I'm gonna add in some backups right here. So let me just channel my inner Star Wars.
Yes.
So, especially when you're talking about Star Wars, first and foremost, sometimes the names are ridiculous. So, Galen Erso, I'm saying Krennic, Din, Lyra, these are all kind of goofy, but the important thing about this movie is it's a self-contained story. And by that, what I'm meaning here is that, like, you have a situation to where, in the arc of things, at this point in time in the Star Wars universe, there's the Empire, it's the Galactic Empire. They're evil,
I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and say my first hot take is that I was on the side of the Empire. Since this was a standalone movie and I didn't really understand what was happening, I was like, they don't seem that bad.
All right, fair enough. We'll get into that. But, okay. Interesting hot take.
Also shocking.
Hot take.
Why? I was like, these like rebels are just killing these. I didn't know the people in the white suits were people. I thought they were robots. And then I was like, oh no, why are they all shooting them all like without any remorse?
Yeah, they're clones at that point in time. But yes.
Wait, so they're not people?
Yeah, they are, but they're clones. And they're fascists. But yeah,
Wait.
anyhow. So again, so we'll get into this in a second, but so the idea here is that you have this evil empire, and this is right before the actual events of the Star Wars trilogy, the initial one. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, the Empire just runs shit in the galaxy, and what was the former Republic had already fallen 20 or 30 years ago in the timeline. And so, certain people like when they're on Jeddah, which is the Jedi like home world where you can see all these abandoned temples. Mm-hmm. One of the characters, who is a blind Jedi, who I thought was just incredible. So that's Donnie Yen, who played
His name's like
Chirrut.
Chirrut?
Chirrut is who's the guardian of the wills, which is essentially kind of like they're not fully a Jedi, but they essentially are kind of Jedi, and then
they're like an apprentice.
And then one again, which was his husband, but they didn't really fully kind of put that out there.
I am so excited about this marriage. Yeah. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, who is Baze Malbus, who's this kind of big guy with this giant gun, who's also trying to guard things. And the idea is that they're guarding this area of Jedi stuff. A number of things to kind of point out really quickly with this movie. It was a colossal clusterfuck in terms of like they replaced that at the end of it, the director. They reshot a bunch of shit in this movie, and that makes sense for a couple of points here, which I'll get into in a second, because there's some things this movie just falls flat on in terms of like there's some jarring character moments. There's actually a really good video essay which we can put in the clients or comments. It's like an hour long. I'll send to you after this. This awesome YouTuber. She
Can we
breaks
get a
down
buzzer which just says nerd alert?
Yeah, she
Hillary?
breaks down this whole thing like over an hour with this movie, and also goes into kind of the whole thing of the troubled production. But long story short, there is some stuff in terms of reshoots that like kind of again makes this a flawed movie, but I'd argue like a flawed masterpiece in certain ways in terms of it has this arc to it, and particularly the ending of the movie has this way of, I think, kind of just paying off, and also when you'll see in the arc of all the Star Wars movies, it'll, I think, make this movie almost like more likable in retrospect when you kind of see that. But yeah, so I mean, the idea behind it is that like there's going to be this big moment where they're stealing the Death Star plans, which sets up kind of the entirety of the arc of the next trilogy, and rather than them escaping and having a nice heroic finish to it, they all die. Like, horribly just die.
I was surprised that this was a tragedy.
In a Disney movie.
I was
which
like,
is awesome.
you guys were setting us up for this Avengers for a long time now.
And you figure, okay, well, maybe the leads are going to make it out alive and everything like that, but nope, they just end. And I think we can get into some specifics. I love certain parts of that and how they did that and how they didn't go for some of the cheap stuff.
I found this frustrating, the relationship between the two leads. I found that relationship so frustrating. And I was like, what are you playing at? I wanted to read the script because I was like, are these characters friends? Are they in love? What is this platonic hug at the end? And then like all the longing stares, and I was like, we're mashing together two different stories right now.
There's definitely some things in there where I think that I can understand where you're coming from. I love it though, because I do think that like rather than just going for the cheap like kiss at the end and everything like that, it was like no, like there were some feelings there, but mostly they were just like on this kind of journey, and it was bigger than themselves. It was about themselves kind of like making atonement for mistakes that they had made and making their lives bigger than themselves and sacrificing for something that's bigger than just the two of them based on that experience. And so like,
but that put me back on the side of the Empire. I'm like, it seems like they're just trying to provide security, and you're like really fucking it up.
We need to unpack that here. So
seems like they're just like, oh my god. Just as a side note, my favorite part of this whole movie was every time it looked like there were toys crashing into each other for the ships, I was dying. I was like, how much did this cost? It was awesome. I was like, this is hilarious.
I do like your description of Star Wars space battles as toys crashing into each other.
That's what it looked like. It looked like the exact like Lego replicas that you see from like, again, like very nerdy like little kids. But
isn't that how they made it back in the day though? They actually had like little models, and they was using like shitty CGI that would get dated.
Yeah,
like,
that's why again, like why the original still holds up.
So do they still use those?
Yeah, they do. In
little
the new
models.
Ones. So that's the thing. One of the big differences between the prequels and the new Abrams ones is that Abrams went back to the original way that the original trilogy was filmed, which was like puppets and like big set pieces and miniatures as opposed to just all CGI. Mm-hmm. Whereas like the prequels, they look like a cartoon because the entire thing was like filmed on green screen and like there's just issues with that. And also like the performances from the actors are not as good, and it's just the stuff that kind of like falls off. But I think the biggest thing is that like we'll unpack your
still on the side of the Empire.
Bootlicking for the Empire here in a second, because we'll talk through that.
They all seem so bad. And I really like Darth Vader. He seems like a really cool guy that I would hang out with. And I was like, how is he not the Emperor? I was very confused by that too. And I was like, wait, that's because I watched this movie twice, guys. He is not the Emperor.
No, he's not. He's the.
So who is the Emperor?
Well, you'll meet the Emperor, but Darth Vader.
So he's like Lord of War or something.
Yeah, essentially. He's
okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good kind of analogy for what he is. But yeah, so this movie introduces Vader essentially at the end of it because he comes in, and again, it ends right at the point where episode 4 starts, which is Vader coming on to Leia's ship. When you see Leia with Carrie Fisher at the very end of the movie. That was also one of the things in this movie that was really jarring, is that both Leia and Grand Moff Tarkin, which was, I don't know if you noticed one character who just looked uncanny valley weird. There's like the older general. They had digitally done that thing where they like put the old, which is like, there's issues with that. Yeah. So
wasn't she?
This is
no offense to the dead, but she was alive then.
She was alive then, and she was cool with it. So this was not they're not going to do that with her in the new ones. They have enough footage that they filmed that they're going to be able to have a send-off for her in this new one supposedly without having to do any of that
So it's like, why didn't they just get her daughter, who's also an actress, to just do that one scene?
Again, so, that would make sense, but like...
Save yourself $100 million.
It would make a lot of sense right there, and that's actually what people kind of point out. But I think that, like, the biggest thing I like about this is it kind of sets up the stakes for the galactic thing, because essentially Star Wars is an analogy for a lot of different things, but one of which is the struggle of democracy versus fascism. And, you know, the Empire represents, you know, and there's a long thing into the prequels as they kind of become that way. But essentially just, you know, fascist empire where military might and authority make, you know, right. And, you know, order is enforced in terms of, you know, by force and also by, you know, corrupt supporting of the various people throughout the galaxy and stuff. And so I thought that this movie, where it succeeds, is how it kind of sets up a kind of self-contained arc here, where you get to kind of see that from an area where instead of them all being, which in the later movies you'll see they're Jedis, they've got space swords, and it's this whole kind of like big thing where like one family is the most important family in the galaxy. This one tells a story of this is the world that Star Wars exists in, and this is kind of like what you're coming into, where there are big stakes, people are dying, there's like big, you know, kind of fights. Also, the rebellion isn't perfect, and like any type of situation here where like there's like, you know, upsides and downsides to that. But you know, the stakes are such that, you know, it really kind of, I think, kind of opens you up to the kind of like what's going on and introducing you to the broader universe before getting tied up into the Skywalker stuff. Because I think the biggest issue with the Star Wars movies, which once you get onto finally the later ones, they're starting to kind of address now, is that like it is so tied to the Skywalkers, and there's an entire big universe and a lot more interesting stories to tell outside of just that particular one story. And also because this was read by a female. Now, the other big issues I have with this is because of all the reshoots and them reworking the movie, her journey is problematic in the sense that the turning point where she switches from being kind of like a I don't give a shit about any type of rebellion to now I am like the person of the rebellion happens in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And there's like no setup for it.
There's no
and, like,
reason why she changed her mind if she's not romantically invested in that other Diego Luna's character.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? So, but they're just friends?
Yeah. And that's
Fuck that.
Yeah.
They're not friends. I love you guys, but I'm not gonna start a rebellion to hang out with you, is what I'm saying.
That's legit. And I do think that, I think you're right to point out that like that the romantic thing seemed to kind of be like what the catalyst was, but they weren't fully kind of selling it. And I think it's unfortunate because they didn't need to make it a romantic thing for her to have the reason there. And I think it's more powerful if it's not a romantic thing, to where it's like either, you know, she started out in the original drafts of the script actually being in the rebellion and not being in prison because she was like degenerate, but because like she was been like trying to fight and because of what happened to her as a kid. You know what I'm saying? So,
I was wondering if the original... I wondered originally, was this written for a female character, or did they make it a female character because of the times?
So it was written for a female character to start with. But the issue was that female character had a very different, like, they moved her around. And that's the other issue, is this movie jumped from, like, world to world, like Valerian style. Like, where you're just like, your head's spinning, you're like, where the fuck are we? Like, you know, like, okay, all right, we're at this planet now, we're jumping to this planet, and this planet got blown up, and then, like, everybody's just like, okay, and then we just kind of move on to the next kind of thing. And, like, the pacing of this movie, I think, has definitely some structural issues with it in terms of also just kind of, like, not hitting the right marks on terms of, like, where I think, which is exciting, which I, you know, would encourage you to watch tonight. But the first Star Wars movie, again, I think that you will hopefully really appreciate just as, like, holy shit, that was perfectly written in terms of, like, the beats and stuff like that for what you're trying to get.
Yeah, because I was like, I think that being so confused on the romantic element between the two of them was what led me to believe that this character may have originally been written as a male. Because there's no need necessarily for that romantic aspect to be her turning point. But then, and it really threw me that I was like, oh, what? And then, why not just start her off as in the rebellion? Why does she have to
go through that whole
shitty?
Yeah. No, I agree.
I did like Forrest Whitaker though.
Well, that's what we're talking about. Let's talk about Forrest Whitaker.
Where did he come from?
Well, and also you put him in that stupid fucking costume with the goddamn, like, you know, he looked like what's his name from Fury Road, from Mad Max Fury Road,
he
like
did.
with the weird oxygen thing, and then like Saul Guerrero is the character he plays, which is like this, like, you know. I guess they're trying to make him like a Malcolm X kind of like analogy, to where he's like too, like, you know, radical for the actual rebellion or whatever it is, because he's
but I'm like, maybe I missed it, but I was like, what did he do that was so radical? I was like, maybe that's in another movie, this character.
There's kind of an offhand line about how he's kind of like, a terrorist or whatever it is. Or his means are, civilians get killed or something like that, as opposed to how he directly opposes the Empire. It's also something where it wasn't very clear, but clearly, he was friends with his dad, or like Jin's dad, the protagonist of the story, and he was the one who saved her after the Empire killed her mom and kidnapped her dad and made him build the Death Star.
Yeah, what's up with that mom? Is she important in other movies? Because I was like, why?
Oh, that they just off her?
Why is she ever there?
Oh,
I was like,
Jin's mom?
Yeah, I was like, is she important in other ways?
Well, because to show that the Empire is brutal and does shit like this. So why are you holding water for the Empire here, Tessa? I would push that back on you.
I'm not against the Empire. I just didn't understand why we had a female
they
character
shoot
with
mom
like
for no reason. Like
she also had a gun, so she was like pulling it was like a gun on a police officer type thing. So I was like, I don't know who shoots first. I don't know
about that. If if the police show up at your house to go ahead and be like, you are getting
but she's also harboring a wanted criminal, so...
How is she harboring a wanted criminal, Mom?
She's with him.
He's not a wanted criminal at the beginning of it.
Yes, he is. Isn't that why they show up?
He's just he's a scientist that they're like, no, dude, you need to build
I thought he defected or something, because why else wouldn't they be able to get him back?
They're building a planet that they commit genocide in this movie. They
Where?
blow up Jeddah. They blow up that entire planet.
There was like 10 people in Jeddah.
That's not true. There are millions of people on that planet. Look at the city that they're in.
It's just a tiny city full of dust.
I am shocked at your, defense of the Empire here. I just think it's so...
They just didn't seem that bad. I mean,
I don't know how, like... Well, hey, Noah doesn't agree here. Genocide is bad. Like,
genocide is bad, but...
Blowing up a planet. I mean, like, just because you can't. I mean, like, they literally blew up that planet just to go ahead and wave their dick. Like, that's what the Empire does.
But it kind of seemed par for the course of what you do in a Star War.
I mean, yeah, but, like... No, like, I mean, you're not actually starting a war with a star. Like, you're not just punching the sun. Like
I would.
Well, I mean, Star Wars are wars in the stars.
So eventually you're going to
blow
up
war
something.
With the stars. Like, you're not like we're going to fight the moon today. Like, I'm saying.
I don't know there are a ton of moons and not all of them are being used. And so if you needed to blow a few up, I don't think it would cause like that big of a thing. Like,
I feel like this is something that we need to explore, and potentially you may need to have a conversation with your therapist about, because, like, I don't understand this, like, I mean, look, I can understand people being inclined towards authority. I understand. I have the opposite inclination. But I get it. Like, that's how some people are wired. But, the Empire's evil.
Well, I just need to know where the Empire came from. Otherwise, it seems more like the U.S. government versus, like, the rebel South. To me, without any back knowledge, it just seems like you don't want to be a part of the Empire for why?
I would argue that it's more like the British Empire and the U.S. rebels, revolutionary right there.
Still, that was
but all these things are problematic because, again, the U.S. government, even in, the era of Lincoln, had, let's just say, some issues. And so, it's something where it's hard to kind of find a perfect analogy. The thing I think that Star Wars does really well versus like Star Trek, because that's traditionally is like the kind of big difference in nerddom, like for this kind of stuff, is you either kind of go Trek or you go Star Wars.
I do prefer Trek.
And well, there's great things about Trek. Is that what I love about Trek is that like I tend to be someone. I love philosophy. I love like the idea also of that humanity. I'm an optimist. I believe that humanity hopefully is going to like get better in 200 years or 300 years. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Star Trek is a very optimistic kind of like aspirational quality to it, at least the original stuff. Again, the new JJ shit is a whole different conversation. And the fact that he's been able to fuck with both things is a whole different conversation. But yeah, I mean, like, and he just clearly took on Star Trek so he could get Star Wars too, which is, yeah, I mean, the Star Wars stuff I feel like is really at its core a story about both like, the individual hero's journey and all that kind of stuff, which you get to in the other ones, but the broader universe and what's always drawn me into it is like, the clear analogies to what we deal with as humanity, because it's a challenge to balance those tendencies towards security or authority and looking towards a strong, big kind of thing right here. You know what I mean? And we as Americans have obviously gone through this period versus the messy, awful, process of democracy, and also understanding that being the case, like, if we are going to have democracies, there's flaws in that too. And there's also issues too in terms of like any type of thing when there are freedom fighters, like there are obviously, like, I mean, it starts out with, what's his name's character? Diego. Has to shoot a guy because, like, otherwise he's gonna blow his cover, and it's like, he just murdered that dude, and like it shows that, like, again, on both sides, but like that also fuels at the end of the movie why I love this movie. I think for all of its flaws, it's dope because, again, what Disney movie kills all the characters by the end of it right there? You know what I'm saying? All the heroes like that.
The tragedy aspect of this was surprising. I expected someone to get out
Nope.
to tell the story.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
All of them died. And so that's what I loved about it too, is that I thought that, like, the one thing about where both of their arcs, like, they do have a payoff in the end is that, like, yeah, they sacrifice themselves for something bigger than themselves and everything. I think that his arc is much better than hers and defined in the movie. I think that hers is the one that's the issue right there. And that's, like, where I think it's a knock on it. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, there's also just so many cool set pieces. Like, I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me and everything. Like, I like that stuff where he's going at the end on the beach and just walking through and getting shot at. Like, that's like a tear-up moment where you're like, holy shit. Like, that's just, like, it's so good. It's just so set up well and paid off, I think, in that kind of moment. Like, there's so many movies, and then we haven't talked about it at all, but playing the lead droid for the Rebels is Alan.
I love that guy.
Who is from Firefly. Who fucking is amazing.
He's fantastic. He's a fantastic actor. Fantastic comedic actor.
He did the entire thing on fucking stilts. You have to see the videos of him. Yeah, so he acted this whole thing. He was on stilts the entire time. And, like, the entire, like, half of his lines are just, like, him just ad-libbing and just fucking with, like, Diego and stuff like that. And, like, yeah, it's just, like, it's really interesting. He actually had to do a lot of weird shit to actually make the whole thing work. And, like, yeah, he was great, I thought.
He's
like,
good.
Yeah, he was good. And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many little things in this movie where I'm like, it's got so many good things in it that, like, when you put them all together, I think the overall thing is, like, it's amazing. And even for its flaws, like, I think it's got, again, it'll be interesting to see once you start seeing other Star Wars movies where you kind of look back on this, and I'd be interested to see if you go back to Rogue One being like, oh, actually, I really dig Rogue One actually about what they did here, because it kind of also subverts certain things on there. So, again.
And that's, like, my only hesitation in this movie is that, like, I know there's so much more going on than what I'm aware of, and just based on the story that you gave me, the Empire doesn't sound that bad. And these
Genocide,
two characters
Tessa.
Again, that is what comes with war.
No, it doesn't. It's a war crime. It's like an actual crime. Like,
but I'm like, we're nonchalantly murdering a lot of people without any blood. Another thing that I absolutely hate about movies when you're killing. That's why I was confused. Are they robots? Are they people? Those white robots?
Stormtroopers. Yes. Stormtroopers. Like the fascist stormtroopers from Nazi Germany, because they're the bad guys. Like, it couldn't be clearer.
I just feel like you used a lot of German words in this, and that was, maybe a bit biased.
I mean, when you go ahead and have Nazis, it's not bias. Like, you get consequences for that. I mean, shit.
But is Darth Vader
We're
supposed to be
gonna catch
Hitler?
shit for the baby cages
Who's
for the next, like, 100 years, and we should. Like,
Did you say baby cages?
Yes, the baby cages the U.S. government has on our southern border right there. Like, we're gonna catch shit for that for the next 100 years, as we should, because
I used to call
stain.
Playpens baby cages, so I got confused.
No, these are the ones where they put, migrant children.
Real baby
and where
cages.
they separate from their parents because we're monsters. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just do think that, like, on a real tip though, like, I'm with you on the violence in movies kind of being, kind of problematic, and that's something also, especially with Star Wars, has always been kind of stylized violence.
Yeah, and I was like, is this for real a kids movie? This is for kids? Children would watch this?
And that's definitely, Rogue One is definitely, I would say, the most adult of the Star Wars movies that I've seen out there. And I mean, they're obviously, it's PG-13, I think, that was rated. It definitely was one of the more adult ones. Like, I love to see, like, a hardcore, like, I always loved did you see the last Hugh Jackman, the most recent Logan, like the Wolverine movie?
The Western one?
Yeah Loved it. I mean, it's violent as shit. Like, I mean, it was just like, it was perfect for the character. That was an amazing,
it was a great way to send him off.
Perfect way to send him off. And I also thought, like, it was like genre defining in terms of, like, this is what you can do with, like, a superhero movie, in terms of actually doing a movie that, like, you don't have to like superheroes at all. That's a good film.
Yeah.
And like it also, to your point, it like shows the brutality of violence. Like
Yeah.
I love the John Wick films, which
I freaking love John Wick.
Oh God,
he's perfect.
But I love also how brutally violent those movies are.
Yeah.
Like when you shoot somebody, like there's blood that splatters
Yes,
like
and
right
there
there.
should be.
There should be. It's the consequences of that kind of stuff right there, because it shows like again, like you know, we grew up in the '90s where there's just so many type, and even going back to the '80s, it's just like ridiculous Rambo kind of violence and shit. Yeah, and it's just it's better there. But I think that overall, I understand where you're coming from with Rogue One. I do not understand.
I needed all of the drama in this to be turned up for a I'm gonna say non-believer, but I'm like, I needed all the drama turned up. Like I needed everyone's characters to be on 10 for this to like make more sense to me. Like, why are we this mad at the Empire? It seems like if you're calling it the Empire, then it's a bunch of nations who've joined. More like a UN is what I'm thinking. But that's not told to me that it's not that.
The Empire is like a nice like coalition of like willing. That's the opposite of an empire. Like the United Nations is that. Like
what
it's like a democratic body. No, an empire is the exact opposite. Like it's like you know the British or the Dutch. You mean like it's not. No, there's no. Like,
but it's not explained anywhere that like like throughout the past 100 years, this specific group, the Empire is too vague. It would be different if it was like the Stormtroopers Empire conquered 1,000 different planets.
I see what you're saying.
And I was like, it's just an empire. And I was like, tell me more.
Well,
what?
Here's the good news. There is more. So,
there's so much more.
What my hope here is that you will tonight watch episode 4, because it starts with the crawl, which all the Star Wars movies are known for starting, and it's actually one of the reasons why they wouldn't. Lucas is not in the guild. Because they wouldn't let him. He had to put the credits in the way that the guild made him, and he's like, "No, this is iconic, and this is like how I'm gonna do my movie." And he was just like, "Fuck you guys."
Did they change the rules though?
No, we'll say they somewhat did, but there's still like a whole like back and forth on it. And so like long story, but there's a whole interesting thing.
You have to like put him in twice if you don't do him at the very beginning.
Yeah,
like,
Lucas is both like amazing in terms of like my favorite Lucas story is that for the longest time he was trying to use this big area by his ranch that he owns, because he owns a giant ranch, as where it'd be the headquarters for ILM. And all the local NIMBYs were like, no, it's going to ruin our property value to have like a, thing right here, which again,
it's like, I've defined your property value. Get out of here.
They fought him for like 10 years until he's finally like, fuck it, I'm going to go ahead and build it somewhere else. And then he took that land and then worked with the developer to develop low-income housing on that instead, which like that's some like next level like good on you fucking Lucas troll shit. But Lucas also is like such a prick that like he refuses to go ahead and like he makes people now like because he re-edited his version of Star Wars. The ones that you'll watch on Disney Plus are the ones that have like all of a sudden you're like, why is there some fucking CG in this movie right there? It's because, well, in fucking 2002, Lucas re-released these things and put these dumb edits on that. And, like, we can't... The original was so much better before these dumb things. They changed, like, a couple songs. So, like, it's just for... Lucas is, like, both really interesting, really cool, and also just kind of, like, a kind of a weirdo.
He's a nerd for his own shit.
Well, and he also... Yeah, and he also... And the problem is that when you'll see the prequels is that, like... The biggest problem with the prequels is that nobody told him no. The first Star Wars movies was much more of a collaboration between him and different, production designers and screenwriters and directors. He only directed the first one. He didn't direct the second one. I think he didn't do the third one either. And you can just see in those movies why like that collaboration was so awesome in terms of what it resulted in. Whereas the prequels were all just like George Lucas show, and so that's where it starts to be like, oh, we have like literally an hour about like. Trade disputes in the galaxy, and like it just gets like there's some shit. But
I wanted to say that the music in this also weirded me out, and I was like, I feel like you're trying to tell me to feel something that these characters are not making me feel, and so that was very distracting to me. And I was like, I need you to turn all of this music down. It was very epic, and like everything they did was extremely epic, which made sense in the big fight scenes. Really underscore those big fight scenes, but the ones. Oops, sorry.
The personal moments.
I was like, what? No, again, I was like, you're leading me to believe that these characters have got something going on. I did really like the Rebel Council. I wanted more scenes of the Rebel Council.
Gotcha.
Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Who are all these people? And I like those weird cut-ins from the 80s movies in that final battle. And I was like, cool.
Awesome. Well, I think that's great. Do you want to maybe kind of let's maybe talk about the SFL criteria?
Yeah. Okay. So SFL, again, we define our SFLs based on 3 sacred criteria. Criteria 1, you must be top billed. Criteria 2, you must move the plot along. And criteria 3, the most important one, is do you have agency? Do your stances matter? Okay, so there's really only one candidate in this movie for SFL dumb, and that's Jen Erso.
Yes.
Played by Felicity Jones. Adorable. I really thought it was a girl from Game of Thrones for a minute. I was like, what?
Amelia
Get
Clarke?
out of here. Yeah.
Yeah, she's
similar.
actually in the Han Solo one.
What?
Yeah. So.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense.
Very similarly.
Is the Han Solo like their attempt at doing like a Marvel, we're going to do a genre movie?
Yes-ish, but also, man, it sucks because they had Lord and Miller, which were the guys who did Into the Spider-Verse, and like also all these other, like they also did the 21 Jump Street movies and everything like that. Like they're amazing. It was too funny and too weird, and like Donald Glover was in a relationship with a pansexual or he's playing Lando Calrissian as a pansexual person in a relationship with a robot. Like, there's so many things in that movie that were so awesome that like are
Why would your sexuality matter if you're in a relationship with a robot?
Well, I'm saying he's pansexual, so that includes in the Star Wars universe like robots.
One thing I did really not like about this movie were the robots. I didn't like them at all.
You mean what we talked about, Alan Tudyk? I mean, like.
Well, I love that guy as an actor, but
okay.
I did not like. I don't like sentient robots.
Oh.
I don't like it. I don't trust it. I think they're all going to murder everyone.
Interesting.
Pass.
All right.
So I was like, I know this is a thing, but I was like, let's go with the R2-D2 and that gold one.
C-3PO.
Yep.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if the two of them actually make any type of dent into like your like appreciation for like, you know, certain robots. Because yes, a lot of them want to kill
their
us.
dialogue annoyed me, and I was like, robots wouldn't say that.
Interesting. Interesting.
Like making jokes. Robots don't make jokes.
I mean, like...
Robots shouldn't make jokes. And I don't like the idea that a robot is doing his own actions. You were given an order. And he's killing people, so he's broken all 3 rules of iRobot. So,
I mean, yeah, no,
so
right.
problematic.
There are some problems there. There are some problems there. To your point, he was a Imperial droid who's been repurposed because normally they just go ahead and just murder indiscriminately. But that one actually had good things in it too, so, you know.
Wow.
Because, again, the Empire are the bad guys.
Unclear.
Jury's still out.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Depends who you ask.
So, all right. So
Let's get the impeachment trial started,
right.
and then we'll just go through eyewitness testimony. No hearsay.
This is how Adam Schiff must feel like there. Be like, well, I just proved here beyond a shadow of a doubt this dude did all the crimes because he was admitted to the crimes, and then Devin Nunes gets up there and was like, and that's why the Chinese stole from Hillary Clinton right here, the Ark of the Covenant, which proves that Obama is the one responsible for it all, which is like, that just, fuck you. It doesn't make any sense. Like, so, yeah, no, I'm right.
Bring the birth certificate.
All right, so criteria, so you said the first criteria.
First criteria is the character or actress top billed, and she obviously is. She's named the lead, Jen Erso. We follow her most of the movie. We're following her, but then criteria 2 is, does she move the plot along?
I am looking at this though, and this is one little point on this, which is the poster, which is she's definitely the biggest person in the poster, except for like a shadow of Darth Vader's head in the back on the Death Star, which is slightly actually bigger than her. So it's funny because it's only in the movie for 4 minutes too.
Is that Golf Ball Planet? Is that the Death Star?
That's the Death Star.
I thought that was just like
that's
a regular
the thing
old
they blew
ship.
up. Remember that they blew up that world and committed genocide and killed all those people on all those innocent people and babies.
It was unclear who died and if anyone was murdered. It seemed like it was evacuated.
Murdered all the babies indiscriminately. Nope.
I saw a few ships get off at that very last minute.
Literally see Forrest Whitaker getting blown up.
Well, I mean, he was half robot, so I don't know if we can really count as a death because he was never alive.
I mean, we're getting dangerously close to a 3/5 compromise for robots here.
That's my favorite bank. This episode is brought to you by Fifth Third Bank.
No, it's Fifth Third, not 3/5.
You decide. Put your money where your pride is.
I did. On a note, I did hear Mayor Pete or Buttigieg described as the living embodiment of a Wells Fargo Pride float, which I was like, oh, that's
oh my God,
that's some.
I started writing. I went to the Satire and Humor Festival this weekend at Second City, and I started writing an article that's pretty much a satire of my CV applying to be Pete Buttigieg's like because Elizabeth Warren hired a poet to reach out to communities of color. So I was like, I want to do that for Pete Buttigieg, but as a comedian. And I was like, that's exactly what he needs. So look out.
He needs
As long as I never have to go to Indiana, I'm on board.
I'm pretty sure he needs at least a single black supporter, so that'll help. I mean,
you know,
any traction he can get right there. So
God.
yeah, man, he. I don't think he's a bad person by any means. I think that obviously he'd be better than the current thing, but
would he?
Yeah, I mean, Trump.
I think he'd be just as ineffective.
I think he'd be ineffective, but I don't think
we'd be spinning our wheels for 4 years.
Well, he wouldn't.
He wouldn't be impeached.
He wouldn't be caging babies, and separating from their children from their mother. Because the cruelty's the point. Because these fucks are. I mean, Stephen Miller is an absolute white supremacist. His emails came out, and it just showed that he's like an actual card-carrying white supremacist. So
I love the episode of SNL. It was like an opening bit where he is just like speaking as a snake. They like bring him on, and he's a snake, and he's just speaking parcel tongue.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, this is amazing.
Accurate.
I was like, I haven't seen SNL in a long time, but I was like, that nailed it.
Accurate. So. Yeah, that dude.
It's like, he's getting married, and I was like,
know.
I want that to be a reality show because I would watch NRA TV to sponsor it. I would be there.
I know that he can't go out to eat in DC because people will rightfully just accost him and shit like that. And it just reminded me. Do you remember here like 2 years ago there was a bartender in Chicago and Eric Trump came in. And she just hawked a loogie in his face and everything like that. I told him to go fuck right off. And like, how do you think about that bartender on occasion? And what a fucking hero, man. Like, not all heroes are
That's fucking horrible.
Not all heroes are okay. Fuck that. Like, this idea that we need to be civil with fucking monsters.
Well,
like,
we don't need to assault people, but...
I disagree. I think that some people need to be assaulted. How else do you stop Nazis?
Okay, so we're okay with indiscriminate acts of violence, but
It's
blowing up
not
a supposed city full of supposed rebels is
Let's
a
be
problem.
clear. I'm okay with discriminate acts of. And again, spitting in someone's face isn't fucking violence.
It's assault.
I mean, it is assault.
It is a violent act.
On the spectrum of assault, it's really in the very fucking far left of that. I mean, what it really,
far left because it's happening because Democrats are perpetrating these crimes.
You hurt
I
someone's
think so,
fucking
Andrew.
feelings because like they need to have their fucking feelings hurt because they're fucking monsters and like it's a consequence.
Well, their feelings
for their
are hurt,
actions.
and that is why they do these
This
outrageous
idea
things.
that by any means, no.
Yes.
So somehow it's our fault that.
No, I didn't say it was our fault. I said their hurt feelings is motivating their action.
So, but again, this idea here that like, and this is, I mean, I know you're joking, but like, like that shit just drives me crazy. This here that somehow like. This is how we got Trump is like, you know what I'm saying? Like no, fuck all that nonsense. Nazis get punched and like Trumps get their fucking face spit in because they're fucking monsters. They are Russian agents and they have ruined this fucking country. I mean, like,
Pasha, we were ruined far before Trump.
I mean, he really took it over the edge.
He's taken it to a new level, let's not say that we were in a good place before.
No, absolutely. I don't disagree with that, whatever. Bernie 2020.
Boo, no Bernie.
Oh, yes, Bernie. So, all right, we'll get distracted. We'll talk about politics all day. So, go Bernie.
Boo.
All right, so criteria 1, she is the lead build 1, although there is some fuckery on the poster. So, yes,
there's some fuckery.
Yes, on
that
number
poster.
1. So, point 2.
Point 2 is, does she move the plot along? Which is,
I'd argue.
yes. Only for like the last third of the movie does I think her actions specifically move the plot. Like if she didn't make her lukewarm speech to that council, then there would be no rebels going to
the whole thing.
Yeah. But actually, weren't they already assembled?
No.
He sent her on a fool's errand.
No. See, because remember, in that situation, they're all like, she pitches it to them, and they're like, no, we're not going to do it. It's not worth it. We don't know what's going to happen here, and it's just too dangerous.
But then he does the slow walk with all of his friends from that aircraft hangar.
He goes out there and like, no, like, I'm going to go ahead and find all the people who actually will do it, but based on her pitch and everything like that. She does force the last events of that movie, but I think to your point of like, again, the first part's just so...
She's literally being dragged from scene to scene, location to location.
She is.
And I was like...
physically at some points by robots. Like, no, 100%. Like, so yeah, I think that, but it is that kind of thing. And again, it's shitty because it's not a good payoff, because again, that's just not a rewarding turn that she makes there. But she does make the turn, and then she does kind of force the final events of this thing, including the big kind of heroic sacrifice at the end. So
I wish that she would have made a bigger sacrifice throughout the movie. Like
if she died.
Well, I mean, the stakes
more do you want?
For me, the stakes for her were so low. Like because she like never really had a turning point. It would be different if her father really had become the person that she thought he'd become and was really building this machine, the Death Star, was really doing it, and she was the assassin sent to kill him because she could get the closest. Yeah. And then she had to make a decision, and then she finds out, no, I really wasn't doing. I've made this flaw and all of that. But she needed to have a point where her belief system and what was really happening had to come to a head, and it never did for me.
Yeah.
And that would be my like biggest thing. And I was like, and then the rest of her actions would have been like, that's a sacrifice. Not only is she part of like reaffirmed her like position with the Rebel Alliance, she's making the ultimate sacrifice. But she's just like, she like pretty much, I mean, she just like walked the plank. Like she didn't, like, it seems like nothing was forcing her to, but.
It's jarring. I couldn't agree with you more. It's definitely, I think, the biggest issue with this movie is that like, that's just, again, it doesn't hit the beats where it needs to set it up and pay that whole thing off.
Yeah.
That being said, what I think is so remarkable about this movie is it still, I think, works despite fucking that up so badly, because like normally that's just going to kill the movie.
Yeah.
And I think that somehow, in spite of itself, it works. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think because it serves a bigger plot.
Right.
Which to me is like a negative, and for me that's a negative because I wanted this to be a truly standalone movie, but the redeeming actions happen in the last 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, well, all of that stuff was worth it. Her lukewarm sacrifice was worth it because she gets the information to Leia.
That's fair.
Which is the point. And I'm like, oh, come on, girl. I wanted this to be your story, your epic tale. And like, I don't know what happens with Leia, but I'm assuming she's important because people dress up as her for Halloween.
She has a role. She's got a role in there in the next movie, so it's excited to see. And it'd be interesting to see too, because she is not top billed Princess Leia in the.
She's not?
Movies. No, I mean she's top billed instead of top 3, but she's not the. It's the story of Luke Skywalker as opposed to Leia, but yeah, it'll be interesting for you to kind of see those ones as it goes. So all right, so yes for the 1. 2, technically yes.
Yes.
3.
Legally yes.
Yeah.
Right? Legally yes.
Legally yes.
Yes.
And 3, does the character have agency?
That's a hard one.
That is a hard one because in the beginning of the movie, she's literally she's imprisoned. And then she's forced into an alliance with the rebels because it's either that or go to whatever prison camp she was on her way to.
Right.
I'm trying to think of the scenes where she exerts agency, and that doesn't. I mean, it kind of when the Forrest Whitaker scene.
Well, I would say, I think it's like the challenge here is that I actually think that she has agency throughout the film. What do you think, Noel? That's Noel, the pod dog.
Yay!
But I think that she has agency throughout the film. I think the challenge here is that like because of the plot holes and kind of the flaws in her character journey, that she's got agency, because I mean in the get-go she's like, I don't want to be here, fuck you guys, and everything like that. When she's got agency.
She could have made a different choice and been like, nah, I'm gonna stay with the prisoners and just not do any of this.
It just felt like she was like acting in her own thing. She wasn't like certainly like a Betty's like like Sue or some type of like kind of trope character by any means throughout any point of the whole thing. But it was also like I think something where I felt that it just because it was so unsatisfying her character arc, that kind of like undermined the fact that like, yeah, she had agency throughout the entire time. It's just that it didn't make any sense for her to make such a big turn right there, without having it set up, and to your point, paying it off right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't do the work, that like, you know, mainly kind of had the reward right there.
I felt like her agency was implicit, and I wanted it to be overt, especially when she's top billed and this is her movie. Like, you need to be, and she does, like when she's making her lukewarm speech to the council. I just really didn't like that speech. I was like, what is happening? Is this, or are you a part of this, or are you not? Are you a rebel, or are you not? You're asking people to die for your idea, and you seem to be improvising.
Well, would you say that this is like the answer also maybe for 3 is legally yes? Because like my argument here would be that like I think legally, this is an SFL.
I like legally.
Yeah. I think this is an SFL, but again, it doesn't mean that it's not a flawed movie and a flawed character in a sense. Of,
I like Jen as a character. Yeah. I just would like her to be. I'm sad that she's dead and we can't use this character anymore.
Prequels.
Very cool. Yeah, if there was a Rogue One 0.0.
That would be Star Wars. Well, there's Clone Wars, which is actually after the ending of the. Well, I mean, you have a couple points here. The Rebels also kind of handles that area. So there's like the time frame. The cartoons start to get into that space. So there's a lot in the deep to get into.
Because I was like, I kind of just assumed that this character was in other movies.
Yeah.
Because they bring up that she's like 16 when she leaves Forrest Whitaker, so I was like between 16 and whatever age she is right now. I assume that she's like fighting with Luke, and like this all seems to be happening congruently and not like significantly before or after the time of the Skywalkers. So I assumed that she was in there also. Yep. Somehow CGI'd in there, or like working on a SEAL team that's like in the orbit of his, and I'm like, but seems that's not the case.
They're not. Just fully self-contained.
Which is weird.
It's weird.
because then why? Why any of this?
I think that like
we just needed to answer the question: how did Leia get the information?
I think that they needed to. Disney had a schedule for their investors of like, well, we got to put out 2 of these Star Wars movies, and they've since changed that a little bit and actually pulled some of the stuff back. But yeah, I think it was also the idea too was to kind of do a Star Wars movie that was more genre based. It was kind of being like a war film essentially and a heist film, kind of all rolled up in one. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's different, but I think that like I mean, my feeling and it sounds like you kind of agree here is that like legally yes, it's an SFL. Is it a satisfying SFL? Not necessarily.
She loses a little bit in the spirit of the SFL, especially when you like juxtapose this female lead of an action movie to Terminator. Yeah. And especially Terminator, the new one, like, oof, it's real good.
Yeah.
They really, they nailed it in the end.
Yeah.
They did. There's something lacking, which originally just makes me believe that this originally it was inspired to either be Diego Luna's movie, and they're like, you know what? Ladies be kicking ass. Let's go ahead and let's flip this. And then it seems like...
we can pay them less.
It's so sad but true. Yeah. But then I always feel like when that's done and you don't put the emphasis on the fact that this is a female character, and why I would say she loses points with the spirit, because it's nothing about her being a woman, nothing about being who she is that makes her be able to excel at being this heist girl. Like nothing we know, at least nothing I learned about her, is just like, I'm an elite something. It's her relationship to her father, her proximity to Diego Luna, and a willingness to give her life.
Well, I think
seems to make her the star of this movie.
Well, I think, and this is the thing, is that like, it sounds like based on the criteria that you guys have, one of the challenges is that like, it's like the Bechdel test, right? You could have something that's like a misogynistic piece of trash that actually passes the Bechdel test. So in terms of like, I think with the SFL, you can hit all 3 of those things without being a 3-dimensional character. And I think that's the big frustration with this movie, is that like, she's just not fleshed out enough in terms of like, she hits those marks and you see where this could have been right here and the thing. And I do think that, again, it was just in terms of the writing changes they ended up fucking up her journey and never really fixed it and didn't give her the kind of payoffs. And really, there's like 2 or 3 fixes in this movie where they could have done that, and like, it could have been so much better because of that.
Yeah. Fix 1, don't kill her.
Well, I still kill her and everybody because that's what makes the movie awesome. But
Rebels dying.
But make it pay off more, and again, make that turn of hers pay off in terms of
Yeah.
like actually putting in the work earlier in the movie at a couple different points, and also like take out like at least 2 of the fucking planets. We don't need to have that many planets in the movie. Just 2 drawings. So.
Yeah, because it was like I'm thinking back and I'm like, yeah, she does like jump in front of the robot, to say like, oh, he's with us before he gets shot, and like she's very willing to sacrifice herself, and I'm like, is that the only female characteristic that is of value in this movie? Is her willingness to die, seemingly?
Yes.
And I was like, is that something specific to that character, or is that all the characters in this movie? Is their willingness to die for this cause is what makes them significant?
And I think that's it. I think it's just the idea that like you're willing to, not just fight for something you believe in, but like pay the ultimate price because it's bigger than you, and it's something that like, for all of them, for whatever reason, they all kind of, on their own journey got to that point where this was what it was worth and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, that's why I love the film, and I think it's exciting because, so today's, we're recording this on the 25th of November, which gives you, let's see, it comes out on the 20th, the episode 9.
Well, I can't see it in theaters because I'll have too many questions.
You got...
Who would I ask my questions to?
Pause.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3...
Yeah. Can we in the booth, just
weeks,
pause right a sec?
About 3.5 weeks to watch 8 movies, maybe 9 if you want to throw Solo in there and everything like that. So, we'll give you the Disney Plus login. I'm excited to hear, what you have here. I'd maybe take some time off of work. You could probably get through a good chunk of that in the course of 1 full day, you know? Because let's see.
One full day?
Yeah, because let's say 2-hour movies. Let's see, there's 8 of them. So 2 times 8 is 16. If you do throw in Solo, that'd be 18. So, it'd be a hard day of, movies right there, 16 hours.
I had to watch this one twice.
You can plow through. Because
I didn't get it.
These ones will make more sense here when you're coming into it. You're not kind of coming into the story kind of at a jarring point right there. But again, it's about the accessibility point. You have questions. You have flawed ideas about the Empire. So I'm excited for you to correct those.
I just need the origin story of the Empire before I can jump on board with the Rebels. Because,
That's fair. You'll get that. So, I mean, the origin story of the Empire itself is fleshed out more in the prequels, but you get enough of it in the episode 4 to understand. Again, they blow up a planet in this movie, so I guess that, that wasn't good enough for you. But, they will...
what is a planet? If they blew up Pluto, would anyone be mad?
No, because there aren't babies on Pluto, but there's people on fucking Jeddah. There definitely were. They died.
You definitely don't know that they're not babies on Pluto.
Te-hee-hee-ho, Tessa. Te-hee-hee-ho. Genocide's bad.
Genocide is obvi bad, but blowing up planets that we may or may not have living creatures, organisms on. That could be plankton. That could be anything.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, if you're listening, can you please chime in about the gravitational pull and what would happen if Pluto was thrown from existence?
Nothing. It's so far from us.
But the one thing I do want to ask is, because you have a lot of opinions about this.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea if you even like this movie. So I'm very excited to hear what you rate it. I'm excited to hear this.
Interesting.
I can't tell.
I'm on the fence. It's definitely very well made.
Do you want to watch the other ones?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm curious now. Yeah. I need to know what happens. I just don't know 18 hours worth, and this is why I never started. Because I was before it was 20-something hours.
Tessa, we live in a society, and in 2019, it's okay if you don't want to participate in the society in the same way we all do in this culture, but you don't have to go ahead and put in that Star Wars work. It's gonna be rewarding. You're gonna like it, and
guys, what are you gonna make Andrew watch? Because you can't force her to watch 20 hours of George Lucas without watching 20 hours of...
Step Up. Fast and the Furious. Step Up and Fast and the Furious.
Well, no, Fast and the Furious, actually, I have only seen the first Fast and the Furious film. I know. So we talked about this, I think, in the last one. No, I'm totally with you. I know I need to watch... I
started crying.
No.
I was what are you saying?
Here's the trade-off. I'm going to go ahead and watch all... I think there's up to 8, right, with Fast and the Furious? No, 9 with Hobbs and Shaw. So...
There's 8 with Hobbs and Shaw.
Wait, because there's Fast 8, right? There hasn't been an 8?
7.
Are you sure? I think
5, 6. 6 when I was in Scotland. 7. What happened in Fast and Furious 8? No, 7 was the ice one.
There was an 8. Fate of the Furious.
Oh, you're right. Because What's Her Face comes back.
Yeah.
Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah.
She came back.
Yeah.
She's not dead.
So we, I am all about this. And
But that seems like you like it too much. So now I want to go with Step Up. Have you seen those? They're so good.
But you kind of, like, I mean, you didn't dislike this movie. I mean, like, I don't think that's quite fair.
Why? They're so good. They're human interest movies just about the love of dance and relationships, and they're fantastic. And the dance scenes, oh my god, we should all watch them together and try to learn the dances. This is my counterpunch when people want me to do Star Wars and things, and I was like, well, let's watch movies that I like, which would be rom-coms, dance
Channing.
flicks.
I do like Channing.
Right? His was good, and he has a follow-up. But there's a character, Moose, who just has all the best moves, and there's a YouTube series that's Step Up too, so if you like really got into it, you could be like, what? It comes on weekly. You can watch those too.
Interesting. All right. Well, I have to go. I will watch maybe the Step Up film to start this whole
We'll have
thing.
our lawyer call your lawyer. We'll
Yeah.
negotiate the terms of the
Yeah,
agreement,
I'm
we'll
not
get back
agreeing
to you
with
next
you,
week when we record.
Indeed, so.
It's so good.
Awesome.
It's so good. Guys, if you watch the Step Up movies, and I know there's like one female character, shockingly, who has a speaking role in these films, but if you want us to do it on the podcast, I will make that sacrifice for you.
You know what's fucked up? I've been thinking for the past 3 minutes that you were talking about Honey.
I love that one too, with Jessica Alba.
Jessica Alba.
Oh, yeah.
That was good too.
She had moves.
And the one, what's the not Flashdance? Is that the one with the water when she's a stripper? And then J-Lo remade it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Those
supposed
were
to be
good.
a really good movie.
Those were good.
Yeah. No, the new one with J-Lo, that's supposed to be
Oh,
really
Hustler?
good.
Hustle?
Yes, you should watch the behind the scenes of her learning to dance. It's phenomenal. We should do that on an episode. I think it's really fun.
Cool.
I like it.
We can record it in a strip club.
I've never been to a strip club. I'm very excited.
Andrew and I will have to take you. We
Yeah.
love them. We just love them.
Yeah, I would put. Yeah, I mean, they're things.
We like
They
them.
exist. Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, Chicago's weird because we have laws in Chicago to where you can't have alcohol if you have nudity. So there's three in Chicago. One's run by the Russian mafia, which is on the south side, which is kind of like scummy. The second one is across the street from the Whole Foods on Kingsbury.
Yeah.
And that's VIPs, which I'll get back to in a second.
Well, it's changed now. It's not called VIPs anymore. It's like a cabaret.
Oh, interesting. Well,
think
that
it's
makes sense because
topless.
it's not, if it's like VIPs, you can't be topless in Chicago. The Admiral is full nudity, and the only way that they can do that is that there's no alcohol. So the Admiral is the creepiest strip club I've ever been to because there's no booze. And so it's just like very, very horny old men that are like, it's greasy. And then
What's the point? Well,
it's very lame. People get drunk in the parking lot or kind of come in there, but it's like, it's also just like, it's greasy. It's on the north side. VIPs though, they dip their boobs in wax, so that like there's like this wax they kind of put over it. And Hillary, on one of our first dates, somehow we ended up at this place. Dennis Rodman was there. No shit.
Andrew, the listeners are aware because I've definitely mentioned this before. Because I mentioned all my celebrity segments on the podcast.
So Dennis Rodman was there, rocking out very hard to Pearl Jam. He was quite wasted, and the people he was with were chef's kiss choice. Just amazing. But what I remember from that was the first time we went there. Like the first woman who comes up there, it's low light, and I thought that I was about to say this, but like. I thought that she had a double mastectomy because like she gets up there and there's like, like this wax over her breast and there was like no nipples on there. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, wow. I was like, huh. And I was like, wow, that's really brave. And like, it's really progressive on this like, strip club. Like, and then the next woman comes up here and I'm like, is it a fucking knife? Like, I was like, wow, it's like, this is so remarkable.
Amazing.
And then I realized that I was like, oh wait, that's like wax. Okay. On their boobs.
I have never heard of that.
So it's some weird shit. Yeah. So
what's the point in just not wear, like, why wax? Why not just a bikini top?
Well,
like,
because if we see the nipples, then that's
or pasties, yeah.
It's all blue laws that I'm sure go back
So
to
that's
shit
what
from.
I have a feeling that's what Rick's is now. Because they say it's a full cabaret
Oh, yeah.
bar with liquor, and I bet they have pasties.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's how they do it in Chicago.
Yeah.
Which is also when they do like the Star Wars. Was it Girl of Tango does the burlesque shows.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Game of Thrones ones, everything like that. So, I'm sorry. I was having a little bit of ice, so. Terrible mic etiquette. Terrible mic etiquette. So, we should wrap this up because Hillary's already yelling at me, so. But this is wonderful, Tessa. Thank you for having me on the podcast again.
Yeah. Well, before we go, we have to give our ratings.
Yes.
I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 Death Stars.
Ooh, excellent. Excellent.
I kind of want one. If it was like smaller, it could fit in my hand, I would take one.
I really am worried about your inclinations towards authoritarianism.
I don't know, but they had the best outfits. I really love those black capes, and I was like, I think I have to choose the monochrome team. The other ones just seem so unorganized and dirty, and so.
I will rate this movie also 4 out of 5 dead leads because yeah, actually 5 out of 5 because all of them died. But no, it was 4 out of 5. I think it's 4 out of 5. I think it's like I really love it as a Star Wars movie for a number of reasons, and I think that as you watch the 18 hours of Star Wars for the next 3 weeks, you'll see I think why it kind of fits in really well and what I kind of really dig about it and stuff. So yeah, I think 4 out of 5 sounds good. So.
Yeah. Well, guys. Oh wait, Hillary, do you want to throw in your rating? Did you watch it?
Nope.
Awesome.
JK, LOL. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's our episode on Star Wars Rogue One. I really liked it. I will watch it again. I watched it twice in 24 hours, so I obviously have time on my hands. So lonely. But yeah, guys, if you have opinions, you have things to say, you want to talk at me, if you also want to join the Empire, visit us on the social medias, and leave us a comment. We're on Instagram at Strong Female Pod, and we're on Twitter at SFL_Chicago. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on as our pod father. As I cross myself.
You can find me online at bernie2020.com, at Bernie
no
Sanders.
political ads on this podcast. We're taking a Twitter stance. Where can they really find
For the
you?
people. For the people. The 1% of the 1% of the 1% have too much money. You get them out of here.
Andrew doesn't have Instagram, so they can find him at my house. Just tweet me and I'll give you my address.
Yay!
Bring a bottle of wine.
All right. Well, I'm going to go watch Channing Tatum dance with a child, so.
Don't say it like that. So good. You watch Step Up, and then we'll talk about it next time on the pod.
Crime drama. Step Up. All right.
There is some intrigue, there is mystery, there is dancing, and there is chanting.
20% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, Rotten Tomatoes is notoriously wrong about everything.
That's fair. That's fair. Awesome.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later. We'll see you later.
Sounds good.
Or next time on SFL.
Bye.
Bye.